Hello, online world. Hello, ka-OTR. This is Off the Record with Migs and Cheska. My partner, Cheska Litan Calao, is currently in the States right now, but this is a very special episode as we talk about Gilas Pilipinas. Gilas fever still on. Currently, the team is serving their quarantine right now at the hotel in Manila. But right now, we're going to talk about all things Gilas. We're very proud of what the team has achieved. Previously, we had on OTR sidelines members, Coach Shandy Arespacochaga, Isaac Go, and Jordan hitting. But right now, we have the general of the team, the point guard, and he's everything Gilas Pilipinas. Welcome to the episode, Coach Tab Baldwin, for this special episode. Coach Tab, how are you?
I'm very good, Megs. Thanks for having me here today.
All right, Coach Tab, lots to talk about basketball and everything else in between about Gilas. Coach Tab, I want to ask you first, how are you? How was the whole trip from the bubble to the qualifiers to Serbia and back to the Philippines? How are you now, Coach?
It was long, and a lot of it was really tough. But of course, when you're in the basketball environment and you have your teammates around you, you have the coaching staff around you. It's a great group of guys. So there's a lot worse it could have been. But the isolation, the bubble, the not being able to mix with, I guess, the real world it wears on you. It gets tough. It gets old. So we're very much looking forward to the end of the quarantine and getting back out into the real world.
Coach Tab, I'll jump the gun and get straight to the point. Of course, when we talk about Gilas, so much lessons learned, so much experience, and so much to talk about. But maybe for you, from your perspective, first-hand perspective, what are the best lessons learned for this current Gilas team, Coach?
I think that we're not as far as maybe what the results of the third FIBA window might have indicated. When we had a couple of great wins over Korea and a good win over Indonesia and good performances. But when we stepped up to the next level, we saw that there's still a lot of holes and a lot of things we have to learn. And I think the biggest lesson is the intensity of our trainings, which probably supersedes most of the trainings that you would have here in the Philippines on the basketball map here, just aren't intense enough to get us ready for that caliber of play that we saw in the Olympic qualifying tournament against Dominican and against Serbia. So I think what we're doing is probably pretty good, but I think that we have to lift the intensity, and I think also we need a lot more preparation games. We need a lot more international experience for these guys so that they're not sort of shell-shocked at the beginnings of games and we're not constantly finding ourselves having to adapt to what our opponents are doing and claw back, and that we can have some ascendancy in games rather than always trying to figure out ways to keep the dam from bursting.
Mm-hmm. Coach Tab, what have been the major improvements that you've seen from this young squad?
Certainly offensively, I think that the lessons we're learning is that the details really do matter. So what the coaching staff has been preaching, and what is one of the hardest things to get the players to practice religiously, is all the minute details of execution. And when you get up against, say, like the Dominican team that really physically stepped in our way and tried to impose themselves physically on us, that the little things like, fake before you cut and bump the defender, things like make your cuts fast, not just at a pedantic pace, which a lot of times in practice they don't do because the defense is different than what you get up against at the intensity of that level. I think those messages now have a lot more meaning to the players. And, these are the things that I'll expect the players to bring into training, the next time that we assemble and begin to get ready for the Asia Cup.
Coach, as you mentioned about attention to detail, like faster cuts, better ball movement, and they've experienced it with Serbia and Dominican Republic. Do you think that they have a better understanding now of what you and the coaching staff are trying to teach? When you mentioned go faster cuts, you got to be able to set screens better because of the realities like Serbia and Dominican Republic.
Absolutely. And as much as you can talk about something and be right, it doesn't have the impact of getting it imposed on you by an opponent. And it's not even when you have really good practices and your players tend to execute things better. It's still not the same as the experience of going up against, these world-class teams that play the game at that level, both in their professional leagues and in their training for the national team, and then obviously when they come to these international tournaments. So experience is invaluable, and it is a much better teacher than just the voices of your coaching staff.
Coach Tab, I want to tell you this personally because, of course, there have been a lot of fan talk and analysis, especially after that first Korea game and maybe the second Korea game also. Personally, Coach Tab, I want to tell this to you honestly, that my favorite play of the first Korea game was the staggered screen for SJ for the 4-point lead in the layup. That was my most favorite shot besides the game winner. It was because of attention to detail, execution down the stretch in crunch time. Usually, Coach, I bet you would agree that we see in the NBA, right? Or maybe we see in some pro leagues where crunch time, 5 seconds left, right? Or under 1 minute to go. Usually it's like isolation play. But you executed that play you've been doing all game. How tough is it, Coach, to execute attention to detail, especially during the biggest moments in crunch time?
I don't think it's any tougher to execute the play. What I think it's tougher to do is to get the players to maintain their discipline. That this is what you train to do. This is how you train, and every play doesn't work every time, and for a variety of reasons: defensive adjustments, defensive cheats, lack of execution, timing issues. And when it does come together, you do expect to get a good result out of the execution, and if the defense does fall asleep a little bit. So for us, it's not just knowing how to execute the play, but it's also having the discipline to, when something breaks down for whatever reason, that you understand what your counters are and your plan B within the possession. And in that particular play, we didn't have to utilize that. The primary option sort of broke open, and the players executed it well. But the fact is that we should do that more often. And that's where our disciplines are not as cemented as a culture yet as what we need them to be. And I think that when you watch a Dominican or a Serbian team or a Lithuania or Slovenia or any of these top international teams, what you're really watching is discipline behavior, and not necessarily great systems. It's just their ability to understand how to play the game, the concepts of the game, and those concepts are what build systems. And those players are so very, very good at executing the concepts. And in that particular play, all that you really saw was us executing a stagger off-ball screen very well. And that's just a concept within the game.
But what you mentioned about discipline, it takes a whole lot, right? It takes a whole lot discipline not to deviate as a player. When you
takes
are
a lot
faced,
of time.
Takes a lot of time too.
Takes a lot of time. It takes, like, the easy part is understanding. The easy part is learning. It's kind of like studying history. You can learn all the facts, you can learn all the dates and all the names, but unless you know the impact of what history has on you today, then the study of history is incomplete. So it's the same. You can learn the play, but unless you understand how to execute that play and how to, what the counters are in case the defense makes an adjustment, then the play has very little value for you.
Now, Coach, moving on now to, of course, the Olympic qualifying tournament, Gilas versus Serbia. What was the game plan like? How was Serbia like facing them as an opponent?
Well, we knew that that they have very big guards. We knew that Marjanovic was a force in the middle. We weren't really sure, how to deal with that because we had 2 7-footers, and we felt we didn't need to double the post because we felt at least we could be big against him. And they are such great passers, and they have such great vision and ball movement that anytime you double team them, the ball just looks like a pinball, how fast it moves and finds shooters, and they have great shooters in that team. So the decision to stay one-on-one in the post with Marjanovic and really to try and do actually what Italy did very well last night to beat Serbia, and that was to exploit Marjanovic in the ball screens when he was playing defense. So our one-on-one defense against him was actually okay until the end game, but we didn't do a great job of exploiting his defensive weaknesses at the other end. But what we did do was we scraped and clawed and scratched our way to staying in the game, and we executed just well enough to keep our nose above the water. And we had some shots down the stretch that really could have I think could have actually turned that game on its ear. And if Ange had hit his three, or Kai had hit his, or SJ had hit his, or Balti had hit his in those last minute and a half, that game could have had a different tone at the very, very end. And so we felt good about it. We felt decent about the game plan. We felt great about the effort of the players, and actually felt pretty good about their composure down the stretch. But, we just didn't hit the shots that could have really turned that game into a win for us. And I think some of that is just part of the education of these players, to have a calm mind and to treat every shot that you take the same. No shot is bigger than any other shot. So there's still lots of lessons to learn individually and for us collectively.
I was supposed to ask Coach Tab if you could take us through that final 3 minutes when I believe RJ Barrientos hit a go-ahead layup, and then you mentioned it best. Sometimes breaks of the game, shots not falling, shots not going your way, but maybe just for that game, Coach Tab, if maybe back to the drawing board amongst the coaching staff, if you were to do something different, if you would have done something the same, what would it have been specifically for that Serbia game?
Look, I mean, Serbia played their hand, and their hand was Teodosic and Marjanovic had to have the ball, and they were going to be the offensive forces to get them home. So they played their hand very, very early in that, when that game got tight. So for us, we had to play our hand, and our hand was the pick and pop game against Marjanovic, because everybody's defense elevates in intensity in those last moments. And we knew that the Serbian defense is a very good defense. So the most important thing to us was not to try necessarily to get our best shooters a shot, because we felt that would be very, very difficult. But it was to get a good shot. And that's why you saw, Kai get an open three and Ange get 2 open threes, because we were picking and popping on Marjanovic. We just didn't hit the shots. Mm-hmm. And then also, Balti gets an open three off of a set play on an out of bounds. And again, he didn't hit the shot. So really our hand was to get our big men 3-point attempts, because we knew anything at the rim or anything attacking off the dribble, we were going to be going against their best defensive players. And so, we did what we wanted, and they did what they wanted, and, theirs was just better than ours at the end of the game.
What about Gilas versus Dominican Republic, Coach? What went different, and how would you assess that game for a team?
There's an old saying in rugby I picked up in New Zealand many years ago. They say all the time in rugby, it's a game of 2 halves. And, the first half certainly was a good performance by us. We were able to do a good job at both ends of the floor. And it really looked and had the feel that we were the better team. Now, we went into the locker room, with full warnings that the Dominican is going to come out a different team. These are hot-blooded Latinos, and, they play the game with passion, as they play all of their sports, as they live their lives. And, they're not ranked 19th in the world because, that they just roll over and die. We also knew that guard trio of Liz and Serrano and Torres were an outstanding, trio of scorers. So we kind of, without, I guess, laboring the point, we kind of knew what was coming to a degree, but we didn't really, I think, prepare the players well enough and outline it well enough. And sure enough, in the second half, they just bullied us, and bullied us legally. There was nothing outside the bounds of good sportsmanship. They just got in our face. If you go back and look at the video, I forget number 7's name. He was a very tough guy, and he's got a reputation as being a very tough guy. He literally stood in Kai's path, and he's only about 6'4". And he stood in Kai's path and wouldn't let him run down the floor, and he forced Kai to have to change directions just to get into the offense. Well, we don't have the experience yet to know how to physically handle that, both in terms of making that type of defense ineffective, but also imposing your own physicality, which we are not ready to do yet, onto these grown men, and these grown men that had been backed into a corner and really were defending their, I guess you'd say, their rightful place to move on in the tournament as a higher seed. So, it was great lessons in the second half, but I was disappointed that we didn't become a bit more confrontational. I think that when we become more experienced, and we will confront that type of situation, commonplace at the elite level. In fact, in the China scrimmage, we even got that a little bit. I was a little disappointed that we didn't sort of elevate our own level of physicality and become a bit confrontational and take the game almost to the edge of, what's acceptable from a sportsmanship standpoint. Because I think if the old saying, if you don't stare a bully in the face, you're going to get bullied all the time. And I think we needed to do that, obviously without crossing the line, but you have to get pretty close to the line to back a bully down, and we didn't do that.
Coach Tab, now for the benefit and maybe visual for our viewers, because when you talk about international tournaments, right, when you go up against Serbia, Dominican Republic, of course throughout history you battled Croatia, Turkey, etc. How can you differentiate the international game? Because a lot of people may think of it as like based on rankings. Oh, Serbia is like number 5, Dominican Republic number 19, and then when you go Philippines against Serbia, right? When you go up against a number 5 team, it means that maybe you could take on the Dominican Republic at number 19. I don't know, maybe along those lines. But I'm just, speaking in behalf of the viewer on how to get a better grasp when you take on teams in the international stage and their differences, for that matter, Coach.
Well, first of all, let me clear something up for you. International rankings mean absolutely nothing. International rankings are based on a 3-year cumulative assessment of your victories in FIBA competitions, including your junior teams. So the ranking doesn't really reflect, what you're actually confronting on the court. For instance, Serbia is generally regarded right now as the second best basketball nation in the world, next to the United States. But they just got knocked out of the OQT by Italy at home. And I don't know what Italy is ranked right now, but it's probably not in the top 10. But this Italian team is a top 10 team. Lithuania just got knocked out by Slovenia. Lithuania is ranked much higher than Slovenia. The Slovenian team is a much better team than Lithuania. Canada, with I think 11 NBA players, just got beaten by the Czech Republic. So you can throw the rankings out, both in terms of teams that are overranked and underranked. So Dominican is probably not a 19th ranked team either, but they're certainly ranked well above us in terms of real terms.
Right.
Now, having said that, and so throw the rankings out, on any given day, you walk out on the court believing you can win, as the Czech team did against Canada. And the Czech team with one NBA player beats a Canadian team with like 11. NBA players. And that's the way you have to think. But the actual adjustment from local basketball, and this is true in most countries, when you get to the international level, is speed of the game, speed of decision making, and size of the players. So what do I mean by that? I'm not talking about the pace of the game. You're still going to have games that have 65 to 75 possessions. That doesn't change that much. But within each possession, the speed of the cuts, the speed of ball movement, the effectiveness and physicality of screens, and the speed of the decision making by experienced players is so much better than what we have right now. And this is the area that we really have to grow. And you're best going to grow by continuing to experience these, playing against these teams.
When you talk about that, coach, improvements, that's attainable. Just from the last point that you mentioned about how effective you set your screens, how fast you move the ball. For us in Philippines, that's attainable from your perspective.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But we have to play lots of international games. And it doesn't happen without that. We can't go into a bubble and train and get that. It just doesn't work that way. You
Right.
can't recreate the intensity and speed of playing a Lithuania or Serbia or United States, Brazil, and Argentina. You cannot recreate that in the practice environment. Now they can, because that's the nature of their players. So this is where the gap really exists, is that they can train at almost the same level that they play, but we can't, not yet, not until we get 30 to 50 of those international games under our belt. And I saw this very thing happen in New Zealand with my team there. So over the 6 years that I coached them, starting with no international experience, just like this Gilas team, and going to a point in 2004 in the Olympics when I thought we had one of the best teams at the Olympics. That process was probably 50 international games. And if you looked at our trainings from 2001, compare them to our trainings in summer of 2004, with basically the same players, entirely different trainings, entirely different.
So it's really a process, coach. You have to devote time and experience and exposure for you to be able to get that.
Exactly. Exactly. It is a process. And that's why you hear so many people, they don't even know what they're saying, but they say, trust the process. That's exactly what they're saying. That's a big part of it.
Yes. Now, Coach Tab, I want to go to, we talk about the players' chemistry, right? We talk about how the young guns, are, well, literally young to be in the international stage, going up against Boban Marjanovic, Milos Teodosic, etc. We talk about their chemistry, but I want to get to know more about the coaches' chemistry, being in the bubble for quite some time and being able to work together. Curious to know what's that like, working together with a select group.
Well, it's kind of like the same as the selection of your team. It starts with character. And when you talk about having John Chico and Kaloy Garcia and Sandy Arispacachaga and Sandro Soriano and Alton Lister and Boyet Fernandez, when you talk about having those guys as a group working together, and then we had Norman Black in there for a while, this is a great group of men, first of all. And I think we're blessed with that here in the Philippines. We're blessed with a lot of coaching knowledge embodied in very good people. So it starts out with the fact that we enjoy being around one another. And then as long as they're prepared to do the hours, and I think that, by reputation and by fact, I'm probably one guy that demands more hours than anybody else. As long as they're prepared to put that 7 in the morning until 1 in the morning, day in sort of 3 or 4 days a week, and then the other days it's only a few hours less, then you can't help but get better. You can't help but develop a chemistry. So we have a lot of fun. We joke around a lot. We, we play practical jokes on one another, and there's plenty of that. But it comes amidst a significant number of hours of hard work and decision making and give and take. I can't stand yes men. I don't want yes men around me. I want people that challenge the way that I think, that are prepared to disagree and argue, but also prepared to justify their position. Don't just say, I went to a clinic, or that's the way I do it in my team. I mean, by God, you better be able to explain the rationale behind your point of difference with me, because I sure have mine.
Mhm.
But I'm not unable to be convinced of something if you have a good rationale. So it happens all the time with us, and I think because of that openness and mutual respect, I think we have a great chemistry as a working unit.
Mm. Coach Tab, staying with chemistry, got to interview SJ just fresh off those that winning shot and fresh off those moments in those weeks, and I asked him, SJ, what was the most crucial time for you in the bubble? And he mentioned, Coach Tab, that second week in the bubble for him and his teammates, where they let their guards down, they let their egos down, because for him in the first week everybody was feeling it out and showing what they can do. But in the second week, that was the most crucial for them, and that's when they really got together and be as a team. For you, Coach, is there a specific time, maybe from the bubble, from the Asia Cup qualifiers to the OPT, where you said that this team is something special?
No, I can't say that there is.
Okay.
I think and I believe in my heart that building the chemistry and building the culture, which is what we're striving to do, it's an evolution. And
Mhm.
certainly in all evolution, I mean, if you study Darwin at all, you understand that evolution sometimes fails. Species go extinct because of some evolutionary blip. It could be climate, it could be catastrophe. You have the same thing when you're building a team culture over time. You have watershed moments where, maybe we have a terrible practice and the coaching staff becomes pretty harsh with the team. And then, you have a great practice and the guys find that, gosh, that feels a lot better when we come in prepared, when we have a talk before practice, or you start to institute some other mechanisms for the way that you manage and operate the environment. So that evolution is ongoing, and I can't recall any watershed moments that were so significant, although that they're fairly constant. And I have to give credit to the entire coaching staff, to our management, Yvette Ruiz, who's always looking out for birthdays and reasons to pull the team together to, instead of have our normal meals, we have a pizza meal where everybody sits around and talks so they don't take their meal to the room. And, that building process never ends. And we have a big board up on the wall in the cafeteria at Laguna, which really has the formula for what we believe to develop the culture that we want. And so we're constantly referencing different aspects of that, as we see that they need to be highlighted. And I think that that's very, very important. But I don't think that we have incurred yet that one moment that has challenged to break us, and that we have really had to look at one another and say, either we need to adhere more closely to our disciplines and guidelines, or we need to give up. I don't think that we have had that crisis moment yet. It didn't come in Serbia. It didn't come in the Dominican. We're being lauded too much, I think. It didn't come in the Korea games. It didn't come in the China scrimmage. It'll come. It'll come somewhere along the way. If you remember back to the 2015 Asia Cup team that lost to Palestine in the first game of the tournament, that was a crisis moment. And from that moment, we made a decision to become a better team. And then we were able to go on and get to the finals. So those things happen. I expect that they will happen, but they're unpredictable as to when.
Mhm. All right. Thank you so much, Coach Tab, for your thoughts, of course, on the current team and everything that happened so far in the past few weeks. Now, this is the time that we entertain questions from the community. Fans are excited that you're going to be here on this podcast, and actually, we have a few friends who sent in their questions, Coach Tab, and thank you so much in advance for answering them. First of all, from Jeng Marzan, what is the importance of system and grooming young guys about team development? And the second part of that question, Coach Tab, is what are the pros and cons of today's youth towards their mindset of the game? Thank you, Jeng, for that question.
Jang, really, it's not system that we should be talking about in reality. I mean, we talk about the building blocks of a player and the building blocks of a team, and we start with fundamentals and we start with character, and everybody knows what those are: dribbling, passing, shooting, defense, rebounding, et cetera, et cetera. And then a lot of people want to jump all the way to system. Like, what do you run? Do you run triangle? Do you run dribble drive? Do you run flex? Do you run Pete Carrill's high post offense? The reality is that systems are built from concepts, and this is where the real teaching is. So what do we mean by concepts? We mean things like, what you talked about earlier, Migs, stagger screens, ball screens, flex screens, defending all these different actions, and players learning those components of a system. And those are the things that are really important, and those are the things in which we amass a lot of time in training. And then we put those together to try and build offensive and defensive systems. And so, those are absolutely critical, and I think probably not as well understood by a lot of coaches, particularly at the grassroots level. And so, if we were going to advance the game, it would be in those areas, and that's where the Europeans do such a phenomenal job, is in the concepts of the game. The pros and cons of today's youth toward the mindset of the game, it's a bigger challenge today than it used to be. I think the mindset is that what we lack is the focus on the game, because there's so many distractions in the world today for young people, and trying to get through those and get players to concentrate on getting better. But even more important than that is, I think there's been a de-emphasis in modern society towards competition. That you hear so much now about, well, I was bullied, but I honestly believe a lot of kids that are talking about bullying are talking about competition. That somebody is just challenging them. I don't really think it's always bullying, but I think it's misconstrued as, how good are you, or how tough are you, or I'm better than you are. Well, you're bullying me. Well, no, I'm not. I'm just challenging you. Now, I'm not saying that in all circumstances, of course, but I think in modern society, we're tending to default to that way of thinking. And whenever I'm challenged, somebody's telling me I'm weak. Well, yeah, they're asking the question. And that's what sports is all about. That's what competition is all about. So we get kids coming from the home environment or from the school environment where they're taught that, into the competitive environment, and they don't respond to competition, and they don't respond to challenges of the coaching staff as well as young players used to. I would counter that with the fact that in today's world, young kids have almost unlimited access to quality knowledge and information. You can go on YouTube now and you can get the best training methods that exist in the world, and they're right there for you free. You can be coached by the very best, and you can do it as much as you want. So, yes, there are pros and cons, and kids that are taking advantage of that and are competitive generally have a great mindset for becoming elite basketball players.
Thank you for those answers to Jeng's question, Coach Tab. Now from RJ and Elaine. Actually, Elaine also wants to ask this same question. Will you, perhaps in the minds of many fans right now, will you be permanent head coach of Gilas? And what are your long-term plans, Coach Tab?
No, I don't think that I'm ready to ask the SVP to install me as the permanent head coach. And we're talking really the time frame up to 2023. I think we need to keep challenging the environment. And to do that, I have to be part of that. I have to understand that if I'm going to say to the players, there's a guy right around the corner who wants to take your job, and if you want to hold your job, you better perform like there's a gun at your head all the time. Because if you don't, somebody's going to step in and take that role. And I think I need to be subject to that as well. I think that's only fair. And I think if I want to set a good example for the players, they need to know that, I'm pushing as hard as I can, not just to make them the best team that I can, but also to secure my spot and to earn my spot and to be worthy of being a national coach, because it is the greatest honor for a coach in any country, is to be the national coach. And having been in that role in several countries, I respect that role. My respect is unlimited for that role. This is a tremendous honor, a tremendous privilege, and it is not mine by right. I can't even say maybe because I'm the best coach. No. I have to perform every day. And if I expect my players to have that mentality, then nothing less is acceptable from me. What are my long-term plans? Retire pretty soon.
Not too soon,
I'm
Coach.
getting
Please,
old.
not too soon. Not too soon. No. We need you.
Look, I think if they have to drag me off the sidelines, that would be a good thing. But I'm getting old, and I'm working hard to keep up with what are the current trends in the game, and I love it. But I don't have the energy I used to. I don't have the, I guess, the strength that I used to have on the court, and the forcefulness in coaching players. I think I've mellowed, and not necessarily for the better. But I'm still hyper competitive. I still have a huge distaste for losing. So as long as I can maintain those qualities, I think that I probably still serve a purpose coaching. This will surprise people. I look forward to the day that I can be an assistant coach. I really do. The pressure of head coaching it gets tough when you get older. And, to be able to give my knowledge to somebody else who's in that role, I actually think that would be very enjoyable. So, I still have a lot of fight left in me, but, I love the game. But, there's a finish date for all of us. There's an expiry date. And Father Time is undefeated. So he's going to get me at some point. And I have to be ready for that.
Well, as I mentioned, Coach, of course, not too soon. Of course, the Philippines needs you, and we all look up to you in respect of what you've done on currently now with the current Gilas team. And pardon me if I'll just react to what you said, Coach Tab. That sets a good example as a leader, right? You mentioned about the metaphor pointing a gun at your head. Now, not only me am I subject, not only the players are subject to, other players want your position, but also me. That also, for me, now my takeaway from that is like contributing to the growth. You have to be on your toes all the time, to the point that you cannot be relaxed, and you have to be perform day in and day out for you to be able to be in that position. So very well said, Coach Tab. Thank you so much. Again, I learned so much from you coming in from that quote. Coach Tab now from Diego Vergel de Dios. He's asking, what is the difference in coaching in the Philippines comparing to New Zealand, Lebanon, and other countries?
There's a lot of differences. There's a lot of similarities. Right throughout the world, from what I've experienced, players are players. They come in, they want to compete, they want to earn their spot, they want to make money, and they love the game. Generally, that's true. I've experienced life in China where I don't think it's the same. I think that players there really treat the game as if it's just a job. I don't see a lot of passion for the game. But most places I've been, there's great passion among the players and competitiveness and a competitive spirit. But each place also has its uniqueness about it as well. And that's generally where you see cultural aspects of the society coming into the team environment. And Philippines is actually one of the best, because if you take the general Filipino individual, they're friendly, they're kind, they're humble. And when you bring those into a team environment, it's very, very easy to build a culture where you don't have arrogance, you don't have head cases, you don't have cancerous people in there. But sometimes in the Philippines, I find myself as a little bit of the outside guy because I drive so hard. I'm not laid back. Like in my personal life, I'm very laid back. But in my professional life, you know, I'm I don't know. Can I say I'm a real pain in the ass, you know, to my players? You know, I'm a stickler for detail. I don't accept mediocrity. I don't accept failure. And I'm an in-your-face guy. So if you come in with a marginal attitude, I'm not going to let it slide. I'm going to be right in their face. And this is not typical of the Philippine culture. So sometimes I am the outsider. Nonetheless, this is what I believe it takes to drive people to get outside of their human nature and perform at an elite level, because it is not human nature to be elite. If it was, we would all be elite, but we're not. We're all average, generally speaking. So the elite are the elite, and the most successful in sport are the elite. So in order to get the average out of you and the elite into you, there has to be a stimulant. There has to be a driving force. And, you know, I'd like to think that I in some ways perform that role. And that's what I try to do.
Coach Tab, from Giancarlo Mercado, who are your all-time coaching influences?
I would start by saying my father, of course. He was my basketball coach. He was a successful basketball coach at the high school level for many, many years. And when I say successful, he was considered amongst the best in his society. So he was a great coach. And then the first coach that I worked for as an assistant coach was a fellow named Larry Chapman, who coached at a university, and I was his assistant. And he was a great influence on me in terms of defensive thinking. My father was very much a fundamentalist and a coacher of details, much like I am today. But Coach Larry Chapman was the guy that really taught me defensive concepts and principles and defensive toughness. But I would say probably the greatest influence on me as a coach was an American football coach who was a legendary coach, and I studied him, and I studied his methodology in terms of player management, in terms of discipline, in terms of attention to detail, in terms of how to treat people. And his name was Paul Bear Bryant. He was the coach of the University of Alabama football program. And I studied him very, very closely, and I was a big fan of his. And I take a lot of my attitude and my man management of players out of his school of coaching.
Thank you for those answers, Coach Tab, and thank you to the ones who submitted their questions from the OTR community. Thank you, guys. I hope you're watching now and got your answers straight from Coach Tab. Follow-up questions, Coach Tab. Perhaps people are interested and excited to know when Kai Soto, you know, he was supposed to play. He suited up to play for the Adelaide 36ers. Of course, contributed to the Gilas program. What are your thoughts on his role, Kai's role, and his improvements that you've seen so far?
Well, he has a significant role in our program, of course, because, you know, we don't grow 7-footers very commonly, and we sure don't grow them with the talent that Kai has. The improvements I've seen in Kai is really his skill set is very good. For a man his size, he has great hands. He has a nice shooting touch. He's ambidextrous. He can use his left and right hand around the rim. He gets up and down the floor very well. But I think the two biggest areas of improvement are his play within the team environment, because he just hasn't done much of that in the last couple of years. And of course, like nobody really has with the pandemic. So he's been victimized, you know, to some degree by that. But even within his training, most of it has been individual in its orientation. And so he needs a lot more game and team environment training, and he'll get that with Adelaide for sure. But the other thing that really I think hampered Kai was he doesn't have a great motor right now. So by that I mean that for him to play at a high level of intensity for an extended period of time is a real challenge for him. So we were trying to play him in 3 to 4 minute bursts, but we even noticed that after the first minute and a half, the intensity of his play went down. He would begin to pace himself a little bit. Of course, he didn't know that. This was a natural thing. But his pursuit of rebounds, his pursuit of rim protection, getting up and down the floor, it all dropped off a little bit in intensity. So, conditioning is very important for him as well, and playing the game continuously at a high level is something that he needs in his training repertoire now.
Coach, just quickly, just a quick one. I'll encompass everybody and I'll break it down into two. When you talk about the front court, right? When you have Ange Kwame, Kai, Baltazar, Gio Chu, etc. What are your thoughts on the front court, and what will be maybe the room for improvement when you talk about that?
Our front court is very young, and not just in age, but in terms of basketball experience, even younger, because Angelo is 23, but he still is very, very young in basketball years. He's really like an 18-year-old learning the game. And working with that over at Ateneo with him, but it's still a long, long way to go. But a tremendous talent. Kai is 19 years old, doesn't have much experience running up and down the court in games. Carl Tamayo, very, very young at 19 years of age. Justin Baltazar and Isaac Go are most experienced guys, but even they have only played at the UAAP level. So, there's a lot more for them to learn. But in terms of number of games, there are leaders there. And then Gio Chu is the other one who's really had hardly any games at the UAAP level. So, while they look good in the airport and they look good in photographs, there's just very, very little game experience there. So this is a problem and something that time will take care of.
What about backcourt, Coach? The backcourt.
The backcourt, I think, is probably got more short-term usefulness, but also probably it requires more improvement than the front court, because we don't have the physical qualities to match the high-level international teams. When you've got small guards like RJ and SJ and even Jordan Heading is not really big by international standards, and Mike Nieto, not big by international standards. They have to learn to play the game against the taller players at a higher level. Now we've got Matt Nieto, we've got Ray Suerte, we've got JD Tunkab. We've got some of these other guys that are on the fringes to come in, but you could see in the games against Serbia and particularly Dominican Republic, we were missing guys of the size, strength, and athleticism of a Dwight Ramos, a 30 Ravenna, a LeBron Lopez. But LeBron's just he's just too young really to grasp all the concepts that we need to play at that level. But these are the guys that in the future really have to bear the torch. And, the smaller guys have to learn how to play against that elite level if they're going to hold on to their spots.
Once again, thank you so much to Coach Tab Baldwin for joining us here on Off the Record. Just a few more questions to go. I'm going to go a bit of a side note. Coach Tab, NBA Finals. Just want to get your thoughts. First time that in a long time that we're not seeing the superstars in action in the finals. It's going to be Suns and Bucks. What are your thoughts on this, and how do you think the series is going to go?
It's too tough to call for me. I mean, I picked Phoenix from the very beginning. The coaches did a pool, and so there's only two of us left. I picked Phoenix, and I think it was Coach Jong picked Milwaukee. So, the old guys, we know a little bit about what's going on. But I picked Phoenix, so I'm going to stick with Phoenix, and I think that they're really well coached. I think that they have a good chemistry, and they're playing the game the right way. And I think that's paying dividends now. And, having been a firm believer in chemistry over talent for literally all of my career, it's nice to see that both teams, are very talented teams. But I think that, if you start changing some of their integral pieces, they'd fall apart pretty quickly. Whereas if you take a hyper talented team and you can take one piece out, they'll still survive on talent. But these teams require their chemistry, and they both have great chemistries.
All right, thank you for that, Coach Tab. So we'll see if it's going to be Phoenix in blank or Bucks in blank. It's going to be an exciting NBA Finals, of course, for the basketball fans. Coach, what are the team's future plans now? After the quarantine, what's going to happen with Gilas?
We're going to, try and get out of this quarantine as fast as we can, and try and spend a little bit of time with the family. But what we need to do is get back into training and games as quickly as we can. So Gilas is looking for some pocket tournaments, probably overseas before the Asia Cup. But nothing is set in stone yet. So the immediate plans are to have hopefully up to a week off after we get out of the bubble or out of the quarantine, and then back into training and bring the players back in that we lost due to injury, and then reconfigure our team and see what changes we need to make, if any, and then get ourselves ready for the Asia Cup.
Lastly, Coach, for the money shot, how can the Gilas program sustain the upward climb?
Well, Migs, it's all about work ethic, and it's not just the amount of work. It's your sweat equity, how much work you do, but it's also your brain equity, how smart you are at doing what you do. And, we need to do both. We need to have these players assemble together, training intelligently, but we also need to get them out on the court and playing games. And, with the pandemic and the situation worldwide, it's still not easy to do that, but we need to be ready. As soon as it is available, we need to be out there and accepting requests and inviting other teams to come here to get as much international competition as we can.
Once again, Coach Tab Baldwin, thank you so much for your time here. Lastly, Coach, message to the fans.
Well, my message is really thank you so much. The support that we received while we were in Serbia and during the window here in Clark was very humbling. We were thrilled with people supporting us, people being excited, people feeling good about the team. We felt great that we maybe gave some uplifting spirit to so many people that are experiencing tough times during the pandemic. And, we just want to say thank you, first of all. And God willing, we will keep bringing positive results to all of you. And we will continue to earn your support. And we respect the fact that it is not our right to represent the country, but it is our privilege. And that privilege extends to representing you, all of the Bayan. And we're so honored to do that. And we thank you all for your support. And we hope to continue to earn that support going forward.
And of course, Coach Tab, you are our honorary Bayan, of course, giving hope, giving courage, and giving, the win that we needed during that window. And of course, representing Gilas Pilipinas with the best of your abilities. And of course, Gilas program, so much to look forward to for the basketball fans around the globe, all the Filipino basketball fans around the world. So once again, thank you so much to Coach Tab Baldwin right here on Off the Record. Coach Tab, I hope you stay safe. I hope you get to achieve all your goals for this Gilas team. And once again, I appreciate your time. So once again, this has been Mix Busos. For my partner, Cheska Litan Calao, of course, we have Gilas Pilipinas head Coach Tab Baldwin. See you guys in the next episode. Thanks, Coach Tab.